And the real nature is enlightened inside and really empowered inside and really magnificent inside. But we don't see it because we keep having this disintegrated state. We fractionated ourselves with disowning parts. Have you ever been in an indecisive mode where you thought, well, part of me wants to do this, another part wants to do that, and part of me wants to be this way, and another part wants to be that? Probably so. That's when you're kind of fractured apart and frazzled by decisions in life and things that you're perceiving and confronting. But can you actually be integrated into one being and be able to be clear about your objectives? That's my topic today. What's the true meaning of integration? For thousands of years, there has been in the philosophy study a study called ontology. And that's the study of being and becoming, or becoming and being. Our essential nature was being. Our existential nature was becoming. So in other words, when we go around and we judge things in life, I'm sure you've done this in your life, when you looked up to somebody and probably exaggerated who they are and minimized yourself. When you did, you fractionated yourself and fractionated them. You exaggerated the positives and minimized the positives in you. Or maybe you looked down on somebody and you exaggerated the negatives and puffed yourself up and exaggerated the positive in you. Anytime we judge somebody and compare ourselves to somebody else and put them on pedestals or pits, we fractionate ourselves and we put on personas en masse. We exaggerate or minimize ourselves instead of be ourselves. But we can take those parts and integrate them into whole when we're not judging, when we actually love somebody. And that's the integration process, how to go from parts to whole. And this is the question that the philosophers have asked: becoming ourselves or being ourselves? When we're in judgment, we're becoming ourselves in a journey of personal development, personas, masks, facades we wear, imposter syndrome. But when we actually integrate them and become whole, we are ourselves. And the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's something emergent about that that gives us even more power. So the question is, how do we do that? How do we take our parts and make it whole? How do we take our differentiated aspects and integrate them, like the calculus? Well, that's all based on the questions we ask. If we see somebody that we exaggerate and we minimize ourselves, and we're too humble to admit what we see in them inside us, we're going to play small. We tend to inject some of their values because we envy them and try to imitate them, inject some of their values and cloud the clarity of our own mission in life. And we're trying to live in their values, which is futile. And if we look down on them and, minimize them and exaggerate us, and again, be imposter and put on our facade, that's not who we are either. That's inauthentic. And what we do is we try to get them to live in our values, which is futile. So anytime we fractionate ourselves and live by our parts and have a part of us that wants to do this and a part of it that wants to do that, which are imposters, then what we do is we end up disempowering ourselves and we try to change others relative to us or us relative to others, both of which are futile, both of which then gives us feedback that that's not our authentic self. What if you found out that everything that's going on in your life, your physiology with your symptoms, your psychology with your intuition, your sociology with your praises and reprimands and responses from people, even your theology with your tragedies and comedies, what if you found out that all of them were trying to help you become integrated, authentic, and back into a balanced state, not judging and imposter syndrome? What if you found out that the way to integrate that is to ask quality questions? Because when you're infatuated with somebody, you're conscious of their upsides, but you're unconscious of the downsides. If you're resentful to somebody, you're conscious of their downsides, unconscious of their upsides. And when you're exaggerating yourself or minimizing yourself, you're splitting yourself up into conscious and unconscious halves. But you can be fully conscious by asking the question: when you're infatuated, what are their downsides? When you're minimizing yourself, what are your upsides? The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask questions that balance things, you integrate yourself and you have pure integration, authenticity, if you want to call it that, equanimity. All these are kind of different aspects of the same state. Different philosophers, thought leaders, or psychologists, or sociologists have different names for the same basic state. So the question is what are the key questions? Well, I've been working on that since I was 18 years old, really, and I've been doing it a long time. And one of the things I found that when you see somebody that you've got above you and you're infatuated with them, for instance, or admire them or put them on a pedestal, and you go, oh, I wish I was like them. Oh, I'm so envious of them. I'd like to imitate them. That's because you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you. So if you ask the question, what specific trait, action or inaction, do I perceive this individual that I'm admiring, displaying, or demonstrating that I admire most? And you narrow it down to what specifically it is that you're comparing yourself to. Because anytime we compare ourselves to others, we're going to distort our perception of ourselves by the law of contrast. But what if you go in there and identify what it is, and then you ask this question? All right, John, go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating the same specific trait that you admire in them. And go find out where you do it and identify where you did it, when you did it, to whom you did it, and who perceives you that way. Because we only judge things in other people that we got inside. And there's an old statement that's in Romans 2:1 in the New Testament that says, beware of judging, basically, because whatever you judge in them, you do the same things. Well, I've been working in that area of reflective awareness for, God, years, decades. And I found that to be true. I've taken, in the breakthrough experience, I've taken at least 125,000 people through, and whatever they've judged in others, I help them find it in themselves. I went through the Oxford Dictionary and found out I had every trait I found in there, 4,628 traits. I had every one of them in my life in different moments, in different phases and stages of my life. And in different ways, I expressed it. So nothing was actually missing in me. And when I realize nothing's missing in me, I'm integrated. But when I think something's missing, I'm too proud or too humble to admit what I see in them inside me. I'm having a fractionated persona. I'm now disintegrated instead of integrated. And I don't have the power. I've given my power away because I've now let this misperception of them interfere with my perception of myself. And I've distorted who I am. And I've fractionated myself instead of integrated. So if I go in there and I go, what specific trait, action, and inaction do I perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that I admire most? Identify it. Then go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating the same specific trait, action, and inaction that you admire. At first, you're going to be too humble to admit it. You go, I don't see it, I don't know, I don't do it. Look again. Or you may be too proud to admit it, but look again. I've held people accountable in the breakthrough experience for 35, 36 years almost. And I found that every single thing they judged, they found in themselves in some form. And some people don't believe that at first, but I assure you it's true. And when you look, you start to level the playing field. And instead of minimizing yourself to something you've exaggerated or exaggerating yourself to something you've minimized, you actually become fully conscious of your own nature. You become fully conscious of what you see in others you have inside. And then you have reflective awareness instead of deflective awareness. Deflective awareness is where we're becoming. Reflective awareness is where we're now honoring our whole self. And we're not denying some part. We're whole in a way we acknowledge that what we see in others beside ourselves. Aristotle called it the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. Whatever we see in others is a projection of our own reality. I found out that when we resent somebody and look down on them, it's because it's reminding us of something we're feeling ashamed of, but we've dissociated from the shame with pride to cover it up, and we're too proud to admit we do that. But the reason why we're resenting them is because it's reminding us of something we're ashamed of, and we're dissociating from it. But if we go in there and I don't know what specific trait, action, or inaction do I perceive in this individual that I despise or dislike most, or resent most, or avoid most, and then I go, now where do I do that? Go to a moment, John, where and when I display that same trait, where was it, when was it, who did I do it to, and who perceives me that way? If you look carefully, you'll find that you have all those traits. Nothing's missing in you. When nothing's missing in you, you're fulfilled. You have integration, wholeness. You're not in parts. You only have parts when you deny parts of yourself. And whenever you sit there too proud or too humble to admit what you see in other people inside you, that judgment leaves you empty. And the emptiness occurs because you're disowning the parts. You know, Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall because he was trying to put his parts back together. Well, we can put our parts back together by being conscious and asking quality questions. Then if we go in there and go one step further, okay, go to a moment where and when I perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating the trait that I admire or the trait that I despise, And in that moment, what are the downsides of that trait? Because every trait's got both sides. And if you're labeling it positive, it's because you're blind to the downsides of that trait. Your intuition is trying to whisper it to you, but you're ignoring it. And you're caught in an impulse to seek that out because it's so positive. And the same thing in resentment. When you're too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you and you look, it's got benefits and upsides. We've all had things we thought were terrible, and a day, a week, a month, a year, or 5 years later, we found out, oh, it blessed our life. Why? We have the wisdom of the ages of the aging process, and we can look now and find a blessing to it. And I say if we go and look, we'll find it. And I've been doing that for 38 years, working with people, thousands of people. And every time they've judged something in somebody, they found they had it, and they found out that if it was a negative or positive, they could find the other side and neutralize it. And the moment they do, instead of judging somebody, you have now reflective awareness, you have equanimity within yourself, equity between you and them, and you realize there's nothing to judge, just something to learn. And all the people around us that we are admiring and despising were there to reveal the parts of us that we had been denying. And once we find out that we've got everything we see in them, we appreciate them for being our teacher. We realize that nothing's missing. We have a moment of love and appreciation and fulfillment. Love is appreciation and fulfillment joined together. And if you actually get to that state, then you're whole again. You're no imposter. The imposter only occurs when we're too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. And that's when we put on our facades, our personas, our masks, and we cover up our real nature. And the real nature is enlightened inside and really empowered inside and really magnificent inside. But we don't see it because we keep having this disintegrated state. We fractionated ourselves with disowning parts. And this is called rememberment. You're remembering the moral amnesia, the things you've judged to be good or bad, you got moral amnesia about it. And now you get to integrate it and become whole again. And this is a holistic view, as Smuts used to call it. And it's also an integrated state of mind. It's the realization that you're actually not missing anything. People go around and they're feeling unfulfilled because they think they're missing things. They compare themselves to others. They think they're too smart or they're too dumb. If you look down on people, you exaggerate yourself. If you look up, you minimize yourself, and you're not yourself. And you want to be loved for who you are. How are you going to be loved for who you are when you're not even being who you are? And how are you going to be loved for yourself when you're not even acknowledging the parts of yourself? Because you keep comparing yourself to other people, and you distort your perception of yourself this way. But this is about asking the right question to integrate yourself. So the true meaning of integration is the integration of all the parts you've disowned and transforming becoming into being. The ontological existential state where you're in the senses, where you're distorting your reality, to eventually a state of presence when you're honoring your reality. And you're now sitting in a self-actualized state, as Maslow would describe. In that state, you have holistic perspective. You're seeing the whole. And the magnificence of who you are is far greater than all the parts and fantasies that you make out of yourself. And you don't need to get rid of any part of yourself. You can embrace yourself. So often we're caught in moral hypocrisies about trying to be nice without mean and kind without cruel and positive without negative. I gave that up about 40 years ago because I found that that's futile trying to be a one-sided individual. I honor both sides. And if you want to be whole, you got to love all sides of yourself, all parts of yourself. So that's why if you're judging other people, they're reminding you of the things you're judging in yourself. And anything you're judging yourself, you're either polarized toward or against. And anything that you're infatuated with yourself or others occupies space and time in your mind and distracts you. Anything you resent in others, it occupies space and time in your mind and distracts you. The second you own it, reflect it, neutralize it, it doesn't run you. You run you. You're now whole again. Your executive center comes online in your forebrain. You now, you might say, have strategic planning. You now have inspired vision. You now have self-governance. You're now in a state where you are able to be objective in your pursuit instead of setting up fantasies. See, when you exaggerate yourself, you set too big of goals in too short a time frames just to humble you. And when you minimize yourself, you set too small a goal in too long a time to make you lift up. They're just mechanisms, homeostatic mechanisms to try to bring you back into authenticity. And the moment you're authenticity, you set real goals in real times and you achieve. And that's why the executive center in the forebrain is called the gratitude center, because you're grateful for life. You have a grace about life. And you're fluidic. You're not impostered. And you're not fragmented. You're integrated. So the true meaning of integration is the honoring of all your parts. And trying to get rid of parts of yourself and trying to be only one-sided is futile. I prove that. We have a thing called hedonic adaptation, hedonic treadmill, and also resourcing. And then what happens is, in desensitization, anytime we go above equilibrium and puff ourselves up, we have forces that bring us back down. And it's called the moral licensing effect. And it's going to make sure we get back into authenticity. But we fight it because we get into the moral hypocrisy where they're supposed to be one-sided. Our mother, our fathers, our preachers, our teachers said, be nice, don't be mean, be kind, don't be cruel. And behind the scenes are moral hypocrites. The truth is you're both. And when you can honor both and embrace both and acknowledge both, you don't have to judge other people that are having to remind you of what you are that you keep denying. You don't have to be too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you. And you can embrace the true you. And that's where the magnificence is. And that's what you want. You want to be loved for who you are, the whole part. You're hoping to find somebody in your life that can love you for your positives and negatives, your kinds and cruels, your ups and downs, and all your flavors. And that's where personal development is, the integration of those parts. Even the high and low self-esteem fluctuations we have throughout the day, when they're integrated, is the true self-worth. To have true self-worth, it's to be able to own all your parts. To have integration is to acknowledge all of you. So that's what this message was today. And that's why I teach the breakthrough experience. The breakthrough experience is where I teach the Demartini method, which is the series of questions that make you fully conscious of what you're omitting in your awareness and allows you to see your wholeness, allows you to take yourself from becoming to being, allows you to take from parts to whole, allows you to take yourself from the amygdala where you're emotionally and basically live in survival to your self-actualized state where you're in thrival. So if you'd like to integrate yourself, you'd like to be able to honor yourself and make a difference being unique instead of trying to fit into everybody else and lose yourself, then come to the breakthrough experience. So I can show you firsthand and have you experience it right on the spot, live it by asking the questions, holding yourself accountable, and learning how to integrate the part of yourself so you can live with integrity instead of frailty and disassemblage, you might say, and disassociation. They say that integration of parts makes whole, but what's interesting in the study of disorder and order, when you have missing information, you have disorder. Your life's a disorder, emotional disorder. When you actually see whole and you have full awareness, mindfulness, if you will, you see the poised presence and you honor the magnificence of the universe in your life. So that's what I do in the breakthrough experience. I help people integrate themselves, be able to be whole again, love their life, love the people around them, transcend the judgments that are misinformations, and become, in a sense, honoring the magnificence of who they are so they can have fulfillment in life instead of parts. Fulfillment means things are full, nothing's missing. When you're unfulfilled, you're missing parts. So if you'd like to integrate yourself, come and join me at the Breakthrough Experience. And please listen to this more than once so you can get the details of what I just said, because you have the capacity to do something extraordinary when you're your real you.